do not have the departments that do not contain a job ID st underscore clerk. Let's use minus. So select department ID from, I don't think we have a job ID in the, job ID in the departments table. So I'll use employees here. So where job ID is equal to st underscore clerk. So when you do this, it gives you 10, 20, 30. You have even the other departments. I think if you use employees here, you'll get the required output, because in the employees table there are additional departments which do not have this 10, 20. Why 30, 40 is not there? 60, 80, 90, 100 and 110. What it says? Departments that do not contain st underscore clerk. Yeah, I think it's a same query, but I think 30 and 60 which is not returning here. So this is a query that you can write. And when you look at the HR department needs a list of countries that have no departments located in them. I think you need to use the countries table here and then get it. So maybe by again using a minus query only you have to get this. So that list of countries that have no departments located in them needs a list of countries that have no departments. So if you query the countries table, so okay, I've got the query from here. If you actually use a union, it will give you the list of countries, country ID and country name. It will give you in the locations table. I don't think we have a country ID, right? Okay, let me just use this query what I got. So when you say the country ID, it is fine. And in the location table, I don't think we have a country ID and country name. This will throw the error, I guess. Yes. Because in the locations table, when you go here, it doesn't have the country ID, and it has a country ID, but it doesn't have a country name, right? We might need to join that with maybe some other table. So if I have to understand, if I understand the question correctly, so they have to display the country code as well as a country name. The countries that have no departments located in them, that have no departments. So can we join this locations table with countries? Yes. Okay. So what you have to do here is let's say inner join, and you need to use countries on, let's say countries is, okay, this is a table name and this is C. Okay, you can write in that way by using a subquery, but you have to try and use a here you have to try and use the minus set operators and then get that. So that is a reason. So I'll try to use this only, L underscore country ID and is equal to C dot country ID. So it basically gives me the list of countries where the locations are present. Column is ambiguously defined. Okay, we'll get that C dot and C dot country name. So when you try and execute, this will give you the list of the countries which has the locations. So when you try to minus this, oops, this many countries doesn't have the data. So yeah, this is a query which you're looking, and it's basically that needs a list of countries that have no department located in them. Okay, so I think when you say that no department located in them, no department located in them, so this will give you me the list of countries, and this will give me the list of countries. So I think we need to even join this with departments, because without the departments we cannot understand whether in all the locations there might be the case that department might not be there. So if we use again an inner join here, departments d on d dot department id is equal to L dot department ID. I think you need to use a location ID here. Okay, D dot location ID L dot location ID. So this will give me the departments and which has the locations. Okay, most of the cases United States, and you have even DE Germany. Okay, let's try to, I'm using a union. I think it should have been the minus query. So if I do it in a reverse way, countries does that not have it, control X minus control V. So this gives me the list of departments, and it's employees United Kingdom, and oops, it doesn't have this. Okay, we can cross check this with the solutions one which we have. I'll forward the SQL practice solutions. Probably you can cross check with that whether you are actually reaching into that or not. So we have a solutions guide. We'll cross check with that whether our approach is correct or not. So it's basically, if I take a look at it, these are the additional practices. I don't know where it is. This is practice 4, practice 5. Yeah, this is the same one what we have written, and this is also more or less the same thing. But I have actually included the departments also. Without the departments, they have written the query. I think looks like there may be some little bit of change in data. So the first query what we have written is spot on, and the second query is also, but it's just that I have included that in the department ID. So what I'll do is now I'll forward all these solutions to you. Probably once you do it, you can cross check that and without wasting our time. So you can just cross check with it and then go for a next one, right? All right. So I think Samyukta has sent one more thing, like about the fourth one, that is your fourth chapter. You had some issue about the 4_10 410. Which one is that? I think I have seen your query, but I think you have to group the data based on the 49. This is 49. Yeah. Count. Yeah, you need to use something like this if it is you need to use a decode function inside that and get the data. I think you're actually using the case statement. Case statement is also fine, but you're using it as if it is equal to 1, you're using 1, else 0. I think you need to just change the query accordingly, Samit. Case when also you can use, but you're just aliasing that as a word. You are aliasing the year name, but instead of an alias, whenever if it is equal to 1995 1 else 0. I think your query also looks fine for me, and that should return the same result. It's the same query that you have written, but you have just used a case statement. That's it. All right, so that's it. And in case if you have any questions on the PLSQL thing, sample procedure that we have discussed yesterday, if you have any questions there, if you are finding any syntax errors with the program that we have written, so you can just ping me here. I'll just take a look at it, and then we will proceed from there. So, all right. So if you're good with it in writing the program, that's fine. And let's move on with the next things. So that is how to write executable statements. We've already seen this in writing the executable statements and all those things. So let's try to write one by one program in using it. So first, a program that I'm going to write. Okay, anyway, you can use the functions and everything. This one, the data type conversions and everything. Nested blocks. No, nested blocks. I don't. Writing a control structure. Okay, let's write some sample programs before we step into that. Some sample programs we'll write, and then we'll move on accordingly. So let's say for understanding the control structures, so we'll see one by one program what we can do about it. So let me just open this one, SQL worksheet. So here we are going to talk about, see, yesterday we have written a very simple program to print it and how to assign the values or how to initialize the values. So the next thing is we'll talk about the control structures. So what do you mean by control structures? It's nothing but how to use the if-else statement in the PLSQL, or how to use else if ladder. Let's say if there is another one, else if end control structure, and similarly the loops, for loop as well as a while loop, and then the do while and all, so which you have. So how can you use them? So these are all called as your control structures, which it is there. So we'll try to write some basic programs and then check it. So one is if then else, and next one is a if else statement, another is a else if, and this one. So we'll also see how to use a case statement. The way how you use a case statement in the SQL, you also have a case statement execution in the PLSQL, which it is there. So how do you use it and how can we achieve? So this is a general if statement. If the condition is true, then the list of statements will get executed. If the condition is false, then else block will get executed. So basically it will evaluate from this to this. If this condition is true, then the list of statements which you have written in the if block will get executed. If this condition is true, then it will be there in the this statements will get executed. Okay, I'm not sure. Is it? Can you guys hear me? Okay. Yes. Okay. Thank you. So let's try to write the simple program. So we'll print the age. If the age is less than 11, basically we'll print a message as I'm a child, or if something older than 11 years, something like that. so which will print it. So how to start with a program is that, so just like the same thing again, use a declare, and you want to write a program that is my age. So age is going to be a number, right? So you need to define the number, and you can initialize the value to some 11. So let's take the same number, or let's say some 15. 15 is the age which I am passing, and end with a semicolon, and you have a begin statement and then the end. So here we are going to write a condition that if what is the, so is PLSQL is a case sensitive language? I want to understand. I mean, I need your response from here. Is PLSQL is a case sensitive language? No, it is not a case sensitive language. It's only the data is case sensitive. Just like your SQL, PLSQL is also not a case sensitive language. So you can write in any case. If I'm writing in the declare in the uppercase or lowercase, any case, it doesn't matter. So it's not a case sensitive language. Okay. So even if you're writing a variable names also, it's not a case sensitive. You can write in uppercase, lowercase. See, here I'm defining in the lowercase. Let me write that in the uppercase. So what will happen? So I'm writing in the uppercase. Let's say if my age is less than 11, so then is a statement that you use, else, end if. So end if is a end block, so which it is there. So now try to print that. I'll print it the message as dbms output dot put underscore line. So here I'm going to write, so I'm a child. So this one is this, and then let's say else block, I'm going to print it. So we'll check the various scenarios here. Okay, so I'm not a child. So what will be the output if I execute this? So let's say you have a dbms output which is turned on. So we'll turn the dbms output on. So if you see this, the value is being initialized as 15. 15 is less than 11. Is it true or false? It's a false condition. So it will go to the else block, and then it will print the message as I'm not a child. So let's try to execute. So this is printing is I'm not a child, that is a 1. Now the same program I'm going to write in a different way. So let me just see, we can also pass the values at the runtime. Somebody has asked when we are talking about an SQL, like how to substitute a value at the runtime. So it's nothing but, let's say I'll use a condition as ampersand age. So when you try to execute, basically it will ask you to enter a value for age. So let's say if I enter 15, so it will print the message as again as a I'm not a child. So what happens if you enter a null value? Okay, so let's say if you enter a null value, what happens? So which value it will print? Will it goes to the else block, or it will go to the if block? See, whenever this condition is evaluated to true, then only this condition will get executed. If it is evaluated to false or null, then only else block only will get executed. Let's say what I'm trying to say here is, instead of specifying the name, null I am passing. Okay, so what happens? Null less than 11, is it true or false? Null less than 11. So I need your response here. Null less than 11, what will be the value? Is it a Boolean value, true or false? Okay, so it's basically it will get evaluated to null. So it cannot compare it. So it will get evaluated to null. So if null, then it will become something like that. See, whenever this condition is evaluated to false or null, then the else block only will get executed. Okay, so just remember that only If the condition is evaluated to true, then only that block of statements will get executed, else it will not get executed. So that is about the if-else condition what you use. So let's even modify this program. It's basically if it is less than 11, I'm writing it as a child. If it is less than 20, enc, and less than 30, I'm in 20s, and less than 40, I'm in my 30s. So else what we print is, this is what the message that we print. So I will just take the same program and then modify it. So this is if else, and we are talking about a else if, multiple conditions whenever you have to execute. So when you are writing else if, there is no s here, so this is not the one, so it's actually this one. Else if is ELSIF. So if you see this, there is no E there. So if it is my age, again, let's say if my age is less than 20, so then what you're going to print, so it's basically that you're printing it as I'm always eng, I'm not always eng. So let's say if you have another one, so else if my age is less than 30s, is less than 30, let's say I will print the message as I'm in 30s, and else we'll write a message as I'm always enc. So I'll pass the value maybe at the runtime. Let's say I'll use it as a 40. So what should be the output now? So 40 is less than 11, false. 40 is less than 20, false. 40 is less than 30, false. So none of the condition gets executed. So we'll write this. So try to execute this. So you'll get it as a always enc. So what happens if I pass the value as 8? What will be the output? 8 is less than 11. This it will print. What about 8 is less than 20? It is also correct, right? So will that condition gets executed? So if one of the condition gets executed, then the remaining conditions will not get executed. So it basically evaluates from top to bottom. If one condition is evaluated to true, if any of all of the above conditions is false, then only the else block will get executed, right? So this is more about the else if ladder. So this is called as a else if ladder that we use. And null value in if statement, I think we already discussed this. So if it is getting evaluated to null, that will not be treated as a true condition and it will be a false one. So that is about this one. Anyway, the case statement is not much used. You can always go for a if statement and you can just try and write a program for it. I'm not going in much details about it. So the next one, okay, here we are talking about a cursors. Anyway, we'll come back to that cursors later on. So you can also write the multiple conditions when you are looping it. So that is about the if statements. And the next one is iterative control. Let's say you want any program to be executed multiple times. So then we go for a basic loop, for loop, and then the while loop. So we'll discuss about 3 types of programs, like for each of them we'll write one program and then understand how to use the loop. So basically when you are using a loop, you need to also mention the condition, to come out of the loop. To come out of the loop, we'll use a statement called as a exit when, and whenever the condition is true, it basically comes out of that. So we'll write a basic example. Let's say I want to print dates from, I'll take a two dates, start date and end date value, and I'll assign a start date and end date value. It should come out of the loop whenever a start date is greater than end date. So that's how I want to write. So I hope you understand my question. So it's basically that if I give 1st Jan 2014 and 31st December 2014, it should print the dates whenever it is more than 31st December 2014, it should come out of the loop. So how do you write that? Let's say declare. Let's say I call one as v start date. So v start date is a date operator, so which I assign it as a 1 Jan 2014. So 1 Jan 2014 and semicolon. Another one is v end date. So this is also a date, and this I'm initializing basically to 31st Jan 2014. 31st Jan 2014, and end, let's say begin, end, whatever is there. So let's say now here I want to print from this to this. Let's say I have a loop and end loop. So this is a loop, this is a basic loop. Within this loop you can print it. Let's say if I want to print dbms output dot put underscore line, let's say you have the date is something like this. I just want to print date is, let's say this is a 1 and I want to concatenate with this. Let's say I want to print the v start date. So it will print the v start date. So, and I will keep on incrementing it. So can I use a self-assignment operator? It's something like this. V start date is equal to v start date plus 1. So what I'm doing is I'm actually incrementing the counter, right? So for a first iteration it will be the 1st Jan 2014, second iteration 2nd Jan 2014, 3rd Jan 2014, like that. You always have to keep exit statement. What happens if you run without an exit statement? It's like an infinity, right? So infinity loop, it will never end, it will keep on getting executed. So you always have to write an exit statement. So right here exit whenever a v start date is greater than v end date, you come out of the loop. So we are checking it. So whenever a v start date, when you are incrementing it, if whenever it is greater than v end date, you just come out of the loop. So that is a condition which we have written. Right. So how to pass the value to the variables? In the sense, if you want to pass at the runtime, you can use ampersand to substitute the value. Or if you want to pass a general way of passing, then you need to go for a procedures. So basically this we are talking about anonymous blocks, so we cannot pass any parameter to this program now. That's why we are just initializing it, else you can substitute the value. Now how many records will be printed now? How many records will be printed? Yes, very good catch. So it should be end with a semicolon. So very good. So this, when I try to execute the program, let's say how many records will be printed or how many lines will be printed here? How many lines will be printed when I execute? How many times this loop will be executed? Okay, let's see that. So whether it will print all 31 days, yes, you're correct. So it will get executed for 31 days. If you see, date is 1st Jan 2014, 31st Jan 2014. So this is how you write that a program here, so which is printing from 1 to 31st. So this is how you can execute it, the loop. So whenever you write a basic loop, so it has to be it has to come out of the loop, and make sure that you always had a exit statement to come out of that. So that is a basic loop example. So next one is a while loop. So next one is a while. And what is the difference between the basic loop and a while loop? So it's basically, in case of a while loop, you first check the condition and enter into the loop. In case of a loop, you're actually checking the condition inside it. So let's try to write the same program in the while loop as well. So when you say that declare, so I can just copy paste it. I mean, till this is anyway the same. So I'm trying to show you the same example to make it very simple. So here I'll write the condition. What would be the condition? If v start date is greater than v end date, then loop and end loop. So basically, and here I'm going to print. Do we need an exit statement for our?
It should be reverse.
It's less than v ended.
Yes, very good.
Less than. Yeah.
Thank you. So do we need an exit statement here to come out of the loop? Is it required? So do we need to increment? Yes, we need to increment the values. So it doesn't increment it on its own. So you have to increment it on this. So and then end with a semicolon. So how many times this loop will get executed? So it's basically again the same amount of number.
30.
30, why?
30, right?
Why 30? Why not
31
30?
less than
Yeah.
31. So
You might have to use 31 or equal to. Yes, it's 30. It's correct. You so when you try to execute this, so it's basically, what is the error? Okay, let's find it out. What is the error? So okay, I don't think we have a then here, is it? Okay, let me just check the syntax. Yeah, you don't have a then keyword over there. So when you try to execute, so it's basically printing till 30. So why? Because once it gets incremented, your 31 Jan 2014 is less than 31 Jan 2014, which is a false. So that's why it will not enter into the loop. If you keep less than or equal to, then it will execute for a 31 times. So that's pretty much on the while loop how it gets executed, right? So that is another condition wherein you can write and then print it. So anyway, we'll see the most of the examples to do that. And the next one is about the for loop. So for loop, if you're actually using it, what is the difference between the basic loops and the for loop is that you don't need to increment the counter and it will automatically gets incremented by 1. It gets incremented by 1. So in case of a while and the basic loop, you can increment your counter more than 1. There is a possibility, right? You can increment, I can increment by 5, I can increment by 10, I can increment by 2, whatever the number that I wanted here. But in case of a for loop, it will always get incremented only 1. It will always get incremented by 1. Let's say using a for loop, I want to print 1 to 100 numbers. Or it's basically, let's try to print only the even numbers from 1 to 100. I want to print it. I want to print the even numbers from 1 to 100 using a for loop. We'll understand the syntax, how it is. So let's say I don't need even a declaration section for this. Okay, anyway, let's use the declaration, and I define one number and called as a my number, and then you call it as a number. Let's say I don't initialize this number. I don't need to initialize, and this you call it as a begin and then the end. So let's say if I use a for loop directly, I want to print even numbers. So you need to use a counter. Just like your C language, you can use I or anything. Let's say the record or number, anything is fine. So number in, you just need to mention the lower limit and then the upper limit. So it basically from 1 to 100, which you have, and you see the loop, and you basically start using the end loop as well. So when you say that number in 1 to 100, so it basically executes it from 1 to the 100. So let's say I want to find out how can I identify the even number. So you need to use a which function will help you to identify the even number. So it's basically you have a modulo division function which you can use it directly like this, number of comma 2. If this my number is equal to 0, then that is a even number. So I want to print only the even numbers. So I'll write the condition here. If my number is equal to 0, then I'll print the number is even. So I'll write it as dbms underscore output dot put underscore line. So which I'll call it as the number is. So what I'm going to write, so let's say space, and I want to print I want to print this one. I want to print the number, so which you can use it. So I don't want to else block. I don't need it. I need just a simple if block. So when you see this 1 to 100, how many times this loop will get executed? How many times this loop will get executed? If I say from 1 to 100, it's nothing but from the 1 to the maximum value. So when you try to execute this, so it basically prints the 50 values, but execution is 100. It will execute for 100 times. It will print only 50 because you have only 50 even numbers between that and this. Okay, there is a compilation error. Let's take a look at it. Which one? Okay. So underscore is missing. Very good. Again, it's a good catch. So this is the one. So when you try and execute this time, so it should print a value. So when you see this, now the number is 2468. Likewise, it has actually print till 100. So this is more about on the printing of how to use a for value. So if I have to print the numbers from 100 to 1, so what should I do? I want to print the numbers in a reverse way. So it should be done, and it has to be done in a reverse way. So all you need to do is that you just need to use a reverse keyword. Let's say if I have to print the numbers from for I in reverse, let's say 1 to 100, loop, and then the end loop. So now I need your answer here. Does it prints from 1 to 100 or 100 to 1? So how it works? dbms output dot put underscore line. Let's say if I print only the value I, so whether it will print values from 1 to 100 or from 100 to 1. So since I'm using a reverse keyword, it should print from 100 to 1. Let's see this. So it's basically 199. It's basically pings from this 100 to 1. So this reverse is a keyword. So what's a disadvantage with the for loop is that you cannot actually make your counter to increment by more than 1. So can I write this statement? Let's say I equal to I plus 10. So in the PLSQL. So is the program is correct or false? So basically I just want to print 1, 11, 21, something like that. So can I, or in a reverse way, whatever you think. So is this is correct? So when you try to execute, it will throw the error. It says that I cannot be used as an assignment operator, which means the increment you cannot control it. In the for loop you cannot control the increment. It will get incremented only by 1. I cannot increment by more than 1. So you cannot use I as an assignment operator to change the value which it has to increment to, and that is not possible in case of a for loop. This like an auto increment which works for a for loop. So this is about the different control structures what we have: for loop, while loop, and then the do while loop. And nested loops are, it's basically loop within the loop. You can probably try and write, if you just have to print a matrix, let's say one by one, or if you just want to print tables. So you can always do that. Let's say I want to print values from 1 to 10 and all. So you can try and write it. So this you can take it as an assignment. So basically what I need to print the tables from 1 to 10. So basically tables from 1 to 10, your upper counter will go over the data from 1 to 10, and your lower counter also will go over the data from this one. Let's say what I'm trying to do that here is, let's do this, otherwise let's implement it, and I'll give maybe the different example for an exercise. Okay, so when you take a look at it, let's say I want to print a message 1 ones are 1, 1 twos are 2. Likewise, I have to print till 10 tables. So how would I do that? So it's basically, I don't need any declaration. I don't need any variables. So how would I use it? This is an outer block. So I'll call it as for I in 1 to 10. That means first loop will get executed for 10 times. So here I'm printing the message as, let's say, dbms output dot put underscore line. Let's say here I'm printing the first, let's table 1, or what do you call, multiplication, or let me just take out it. I don't need anything. Okay. So all I need is for j in 1 to 10 loop and end loop. To make it simple, let me take instead of writing a direct dbms statement, what I'll do is I write this one. Let's say I'll define one number called as a v result. So result is going to be is a number. Yes, it's a number. So I'm not going to initialize anything. It's just a number. So what would be the result? So v underscore result is equal to I star j. So can I use a multiplication operator directly here? Yes. I star j. Now I just want to print here dbms output dot put underscore line. So let's say you want to print I into j, right? So first is I, and you want a x. It's like 1 by 1 equal to 1. I want to get that. So in order to get the by symbol here, I'm using a x. So I want a space before and after to represent it clearly. So I can give a space here and after this. And so to do this, I need to use a concatenation operator here. And this here also I have to use a concatenation operator. And j. So basically after this you need a equal to symbol. So use equal to, and then again use a concatenation symbol. What is the result? What is the result? So it's v underscore result. So let's keep this. Now what it will print? 1 by 1 equal to 1, 1 by 2. So likewise it will print. So if I want to get executed only for, let's say, it will print heavy data, right? So let's print it only till 2, 1 and 2 tables, or 1 and 2. So when I try to execute, it has to print it. Let's see now how the data will be printed. So it's basically, this is a first table and this is a second table what it is there, and this is how it is printing. So this is like a nested loop. So how many times your inner block will get executed? How many times inner block will get executed? So it basically will get executed for 20 times. For every outer value, it will get executed for 10 times. So when you say this is, you have two values. For each value of the outer block, inner block will get executed for 10 times. So it's basically 10 times it will get executed in, 10 times each. So it will basically get executed for 20 times. So in the same way, you can also write nested loops even for a while and the do while. Most of the cases we go for a for loop because it automatically gets incremented. You don't need to take care of exiting of the loop. Automatically it will come out of the loop, right? You don't need to do any statements and anything, you need not to write it. So that is your complete overview about the fifth chapter. So I'm not going in details about the composite data types because in the data warehouse you're not going to discuss, you're not going to use much about the composite data types. It's basically the using the records, collections, arrays, arrays, all those things. You don't use them basically. So I'm not going in much details about it. So whatever is required for an Informatica Power Center developer, so we are actually looking at it, what is being done. So it's basically, somebody has asked the question in the last time, like, do we have arrays and then the collections in the PLSQL just like other languages? Yes. We have an associative arrays called as an index by tables, and we have even the records, nested tables, and then the arrays, variable length arrays. So this can be handled. So when you say a composite data type, let me just give you an example. Composite data type is nothing but this is a composite data type, PLSQL record. So which is a combination of heterogeneous data types. Right. So far any questions with the basics, control structures and all those things? All right. So the next one that we are going to talk about is an explicit cursors. What do you mean by a cursor, and what is the need of cursor and how to use them? So basically every SQL statement executed in Oracle is called as a cursor. When you execute an insert statement, when you execute a simple select statement or anything which you write in the Oracle is called as a cursor. Cursor is nothing but it's a memory pointer. It's a memory block in Oracle which helps you to hold the group of records. So that is called as a cursor. So any DML statement you can call it as a cursor. Insert statement is called as a cursor. Update statement is called as a cursor. Likewise. So these implicit cursors, whenever you keep them as part of the program, let's say, so far we have not written an insert statement, update statement inside a PLSQL block. That means, means that we cannot use that? No, we can use an insert statement and all. So all these insert statements are called as an implicit cursors. So which we call, Oracle itself will manage them and then close them. See, basically whenever you call, it has to be executed in the memory, right? So it will create some memory pointer, and once the execution is completed, it will be deleted from the memory. So basically, so for a database, the number of cursors will be defined while creating a database. So by default, the number of cursors for a database will be 300. If a program is opening more than 300 cursors, what happens? It will throw the error saying that you have exceeded the number of cursors in the memory, something like that. So the cursor, in a simple words, you call it as a memory pointer. It's a pointer in a memory which helps you to process the data. And you have two types of cursors. One is a implicit cursor and another is an explicit cursor. Implicit and another is a explicit. Explicit is something that which are defined by the programmer, or defined by user. You can call it as a defined by user. All explicit cursors are the user defined cursors which you use it. So this is more on the definitions of explicit cursors and the implicit cursors. So whenever you want to actually loop through the data, then we'll go for explicit cursor operations. So we'll discuss about the cursor operation. Let's say now you got the program to print all the list of employee names and their job IDs. I want to print it. Basically, if an employee table is returning 106 rows, I have to print all the 106 rows and then come out of the loop. So basically, how the cursor works is, first you need to declare the cursor, then you need to open the cursor, then fetch the result into a variable, then you will check whether cursor still has some more records or it doesn't have any records. If it is yes, then we'll close that cursor. That means we're actually removing that cursor from the Oracle server memory. So when you say that if it is not an empty, then it's a kind of a loop. So till it gets empty, it will keep on getting executed. So explicit cursors, always first you have to declare them, open them, fetch the result and check whether it is an empty or not. If it is an empty, close it. If it is not an empty, repeat it. So anyway, you'll understand that how it works. So this is how controlling of the cursor. Opening the cursor means you're actually opening a memory pointer, and fetching the row means you're actually fetching one by one row from a group of records. First record, second record, third record, it's like a loop. And then once everything is out, let's say this is empty now, it doesn't have any rows, then it's a cursor pointer you're closing. So this is a way of controlling the explicit cursors. So we'll take an example. So basically cursors again can be managed in two ways. One is with a basic loop and another is with a for loop. Both can be done. So how do you maintain it? So basically if you write one program, you can easily understand that. So how it works. So basically, and cursor comes up with a few attributes. So one is called as a percentage not found and percentage row count. All these are all the different attributes in the cursor. So let me just check where do we have that attributes, because you need to know the cursor attributes. Unless without the cursor attributes we cannot actually close the cursor, and you cannot basically find out whether the cursor is empty or not, all those things. So I want attributes about it. Okay. So there are a few cursor attributes which you have to remember. So cursor attributes, cursor attributes. So first one, let's say cursor attribute not found. So whenever, if any record is not there in the cursor, this not found attribute will return true. If the record is there, it will return false. So that's how it works. So basically when you say a row count, so when you use row count attribute, it basically gives you the number of rows returned by the cursor. It's basically, suppose if my cursor is returning 10 rows, this row count value will be keep on increasing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like that. So, and another cursor attribute which you have is open. So if you want to know whether the cursor is opened in the memory, if the cursor is open in the memory, then if the cursor is open in the memory, then it will return true, else it will return false. So that's how it works. That is your true. So these attributes are something that which you need to know. So if you say that there is a found attribute also, if there is a data present in this cursor, then it will return true, else it will return false. So that's how it works. These are all the cursor attributes which we use it. So let's take a one simple program and then print, let's take one simple program and then print. I want to print basically the employee ID. It's basically the employee number and then the employee last name, which I want to print it. So always, where do you define the cursors? Is it in the execution block or the declaration block? Yes, it's in the declaration. Cursor is just like a variable which you have to declare it. So let's try to write a program. So using a simple cursor, what it is there. So what I'm doing is I'm actually trying to print one group of employees for a department number 90. I want to print all the employees in department number 90. Basically I want to print the employee ID of them and the job ID, and then job ID basically, and followed by the salary of those employees. Let's say employee ID, last name and the salary. Let's bring three things. Okay, so how many variables I require to print three things? How many variables I require? Basically I need three variables. So first one is again, let's say first one is v underscore employee ID. So let's say employee ID is a number. So I'm going to show you a new thing here. I don't know whether we still have the percentage type attributes. Yeah, we have a percentage type attributes. So concentrate here. We are learning a new thing here. Okay. So far, whenever you are defined a variable, what did you do it? You basically defined it as a number or a varchar or a boolean or whatever. So now in this case, basically I'm not using a data type. So I'm defining my data type as percentage type. So can somebody tell me what is the use of this? So what is the way of defining this? When I say employees dot employee ID percentage type, that means it will actually go to the structure of the employee table and look for what is the data type of an employee ID, and then it will assign that data type to this variable. So it will go to employees table. Let's say in your SQL block you have an employees table. It will go here. Basically it is stored in the database, right? And it will assign the data type, which is number of 6, 0 to this. So it's always the good practice to define the variables with the percentage type values, because what is the use of defining the percentage type is that it basically helps you to assign the value at the runtime. So there is an advantage in doing it, and it's also a best practice. So you can always define, whenever you want to define a column or a variable which will holds your table level column data, then you can define always the variables with a percentage type attribute, v employee ID. Similarly, v underscore last name, I can still again do that, employees dot last name percentage type, right? And I need even the salary, so v underscore salary, so which I call it as employees dot salary percentage type. So this is employee ID, last name, salary, all these things which are present. Now I need to define a cursor to retrieve. See which department employees you would like to print. Department number 90 employees. So how do you define a cursor? So this is an explicit cursor. So you're defining it as cursor, and what is always the cursor starts with cur underscore. Let's say cursor emp is, so you can write it as what and all are the columns that you want. I need a employee ID, I need a last name of an employee, and I need a salary. So cursor here is nothing but a SQL query which you are writing. So which table it is? From employees. So let's say where I need only the employees who belongs to department ID 90. So thus you use this here. Let's say I have this as a department ID 90, and when we go here, now I need to loop through the cursor. So what are the different phases of the cursor? First you need to open the cursor, fetch the data. When the cursor is empty, close the cursor. So yes, so you need to understand the cursor phases here. First you need to declare the cursor, right? So the second one is open the cursor. So the third step is to fetch the cursor. So once you are done fetching the data, what you're going to do, close the cursor what it is there. So you're going to use this values in any way doing this. So let me try to do that. Okay. So for we are using a basic level of cursor. First thing is to opening a cursor. So how do you write a comments here? Like let's say opening the cursor. So opening the cursor. So how to open a cursor? Open. What is the cursor name? CUR_EMP. So open the cursor and then close it. So how do you fetch the result? So fetch. So how many columns that the cursor is returning? 3 columns, right? So what is the cursor name again? CUR_EMP. So you need to use this clause into, okay, CUR_EMP into, what are all the values it is giving? It is giving employee ID, last name and the salary. So use V_employee ID, comma, V_last name. So you need to position the columns appropriately, V_salary. So now you fetch the values. Here I want to print it. I want to print all these values, basically employee ID, comma, this and all. So let me just use the DBMS statement, DBMS output dot put underscore line. Let's say you want to print an employee ID. So just use employee ID. So V_employee ID, which it is there, and basically afterwards I want to use the comma in between employee ID, and let's say the next one, comma. So the next one is your last name. I'll call this as a name. So basically you'll get with the experience like how to organize these things. Let's say name, and you want to use the name of an employee. So what is the name? Is nothing but the V last name. So V last name. So let's say I want to print only the name and then this. Okay, let's take it. Salary column, you just have it aside. And now, so whenever a cursor is not there, so you actually have to go within the loop because it is returning you the multiple values, right? So multiple attributes have been written. So you need to go within the loop, because when I say for a 90 department, it might return more than one record. So it has to go within the loop. And I want this to come out of this exit when, so whenever a cursor doesn't find a value, I want to exit out of this. So CUR_EMP. So let's say what is the value is that percentage not found. So exit when cursor_EMP percentage not found. So this is a value which you have to do that. So what it will do, it will basically go one by one record and then execute and comes out of it whenever it doesn't find any record. So you need to include this, otherwise cursor will not come out of this. and last, once it comes out of the loop, basically it has to close the cursor. So what is a cursor? So this, you can use this one. So when I execute this, basically it will print me all the employees which are returned by this one. So let's try to execute. So now it has printed. Why it is printing twice? Department ID 90. Why it is printing twice? Let me just execute. I think there are somebody has inserted a duplicate records into this. No? Why it is printing twice? Okay, let me just execute again and check. 100. Why 102 is being written twice? Okay, basically it has to be before this, otherwise after printing it is basically fetching the same value and then printing the twice. So now let's try to execute. It should exit whenever there is no record format. One second. Exit when loop, fetch the data. Yeah, it should be here. One second. Whenever it doesn't find the matching record, it should come out of the loop. Yes, so it should be here actually before the printing of the message. It should come out of the loop once it fetches the value, and if it doesn't find some matching record, it has to come out of that. So the exit statement was just below that. That's why it was printing 102 twice, and now it is printing only once. So what we have understand in this example is that it's basically you're defining a cursor, you're looping through it, and then this is the basic way of retrieving the cursor. This is the basic way of writing the cursor. So now let's say basically if you go for another way of opening the cursor, see, when you go for a basic loop, you have to open the cursor, you have to fetch the data, and you have to come out of the loop. So same program we can also write by using a for loop. So if you use a for loop, basically that you don't need to open the cursor, you don't need to close the cursor, all these things are not required. So what you can do is for, let's say, record underscore emp, in you need to use it as cur underscore emp. I hope you're following here. So, and you don't need to use a fetch. Fetch is not required. So what you can do is you can directly assign the values using this. So fetch is not required. Let's say if I want to assign the employee ID value, I can directly refer v employee ID equal to record underscore emp dot employee ID and v underscore last name. So basically you'll use it as record underscore emp dot last name. So you can just assign, you don't need to use a fetch statement, and you don't need to even use the exit statement here. It will basically comes out of that, and you don't need to close the cursor. Opening the cursor, closing the cursor, nothing is required. So always you can refer to use the for only, because you don't need to do anything. So if it is a basic thing, you need to use it, you need to come out of it and everything. So always it's preferable to use a for loop when you're going with the cursors. It also prints the same way. It's just that I have used a for loop to execute my cursor. So whenever I run this, okay, there is some error, semicolon is missing here, and let's try to again execute this. So this time it has print the same result. So the difference between the for loop and then this is that you don't need to open it and you don't need to close the cursors. So basically this is cursor for this one. So we talked about the explicit cursor attributes. Percentage open means evaluates true if the cursor is open. A percentage not found evaluates to true if the most recent fetch does not return a record, and found returns a true, and then the row count evaluates the total number of rows returned by so far. Basically if it returns 10 rows, it will print from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 like that. See what I'm trying to say is let's say if you use that with this itself, let's say you want to print the row count. So I'm trying to change this, so concentrate here. Okay, just let's say that row, and I'm just using the attribute directly. So what I can do is cursor percentage of percentage row count. If the cursor returns the 10 records, it will return you the values fetched so far. Means for a first iteration it will give 1, second iteration 2, 3, 4, 5 like that. It will keep on getting incremented. Now how the value will change? Row 1, row 2, row 3 like that, you'll get the result. Observe the output. I'm clearing it and even I'm clearing this. So when you execute, what is the attribute that you're using percentage row count, how it works? So see here, row 1, this one, row 2 is this, row 2 is this, likewise you can print it. So row count attribute returns the number of rows which are returned so far. So what is the use of cursors? Very good question. So when you say that use of cursors is that whenever you want to process a group of data, let's say you have a list of employees and you got the requirement that I need to divide all the employees into 3 different sets. If the employee is a sales guy, I want to write into some sales table. If he is a what do you call a manager, then I want to write into a manager table. If those guys are freshers, then I want to write them into some. So it's basically it helps you to loop through the group of records. It will help you to access the group of records in a memory. So whenever you want to access any data through the query, that can be achieved by using the cursors. So explicit cursors basically helps you to identify the number of rows. Yeah, if you have yes, you can basically it's not exactly same as a router, but yes, it will help you to process the data. So that's more on the cursor part. There are 2 ways to define them. One is this thing and then this. So in the again next class is on Sunday, your time, Sunday evening. Tomorrow we do not have a class. Next class is on the Sunday evening. So we'll again meet and next time we'll discuss the exceptions, procedures and the functions. I think we have a practices here. You can probably start practicing all of them. So the first one lesson is, okay, let me just go back. I think this is helping you to create the connection and all those things. You can go for it. And the first one is the practice lesson which you have. You can follow them one by one. How to do that? Just leave the 6th chapter because we didn't talk about it, and leave that 6th chapter. In case if you're actually applying for a PLSQL centric projects, then you need to learn about the composite data types and all, or just enough that the PLSQL is not required. So you can go by understanding all of them, whatever the practice, and then the solutions, everything is there here, right? Any questions on this today's class? If you go ahead now. This document I already sent you. Probably you can cross check yesterday's mail. In my yesterday's mail, I already attached this document. So yeah, yes, Nikhil.